Alrighty, so we're at part two of the 14 principles of democracy, and this is just going to be a little bit of you just listening to me for a lecture because I'm going to try to make this one kind of short and sweet. I've made some to the point kind of notes here for this lecture for you guys. As you can see, this is from my classroom, so welcome. Hi, my name is Mr. Newton, and welcome to Westmont High School. Alrighty, so we left off with transparency. It was the last thing that we talked about. So the first thing, and let me just do just a really quick recap for you. I think transparency, yes, was where we left off. Yes, transparency was where we left off. So the next one is limited government and a Bill of Rights, and the Bill of Rights really is. Uh, the citizens' rights and freedoms, and they're helped. And when we talk about the control and abuse of powers, one of the things that the Bill of Rights does is it limits the powers of the government. It makes it easy for the courts to enforce any kind of laws. These make freedoms a little more, uh, I guess, harder to take away. That would probably be the best way to say it. And it really defines the freedoms of the people. Now, yes, the U.S. Bill of Rights, uh, the first, few are the ones that are most commonly debated, and that is probably the biggest part of when we talk about the principles of democracy. That's that right to be able to speak freely and to believe whatever you want to believe. So the next one is the control of the abuse of powers, and it's more about the checks and balances. The U.S. system of government, we have an executive, a legislative, and a judicial branch, and they all kind of work together. One doesn't have any more power than the other, although sometimes we feel like they do, but they don't. Um, they are subject to any kind of investigations for wrongdoings. The courts can judge them. So and this is in any part of the government, whether it's a congressman, a senator, um, the president, and this is not just at the federal level. As you know, even at the state level, these each state has their own constitution, their own Bill of Rights, and it's these things that help control any one person from abusing the power. Economic freedom is, um, I got to say, probably one of the better things that most of us enjoy, and it's that right to choose your own job, to join labor unions, to just participate in capitalism, if you will. And this allows you for private ownership of property, businesses, and uh, anybody can start a business. I will tell you, a couple of years ago, as a side job, I just decided that one summer I wanted to start a lawn business. So me and my lawnmower and my pickup truck, and off we went. And that's how simple it is, because the government says that you can do that. Now, of course, there are some forms and things you have to fill out, and of course, you have to pay taxes and stuff. But that's part of the process. The biggest discussion, and it's been an ongoing discussion. I'm going to tilt this down a little bit so you guys there's a little bit better. Equality is been the biggest, probably, the discussion that we have had since the formation of this country. Um, it was about slavery for a big portion of the beginning of this country, and then once slavery was over, then it was about that struggle for equality and civil rights. Um, they say you can legislate what people can do, but not how people can think, and that's part of the problem with equality. It's that we're all free and treated equally, at least by the federal government, by the state governments, by our local governments. Uh, we have that right to our own cultures, our own religions, our own languages. Um, and the biggest thing is, which I've kind of really already said, is the equality in the eyes of the law. And we're entitled to the same protection. Everybody gets the same protection. And as we go through this course, we'll talk about the Bill of Rights. We'll talk about those constitutional guarantees and maybe even some of the laws that were changed to help basically ensure that people even follow the rights that are guaranteed in the Constitution. Individual or human rights is the next one, and this is supposed to help protect the dignity of all people. Things like freedom of movement, speech, religion, and assembly. When I say freedom of movement, you don't have to get permission to get in your car and drive from here in Augusta, Georgia, to Atlanta or Detroit or Chicago or to Seattle. You can just do so. There's no, you have to get permission from anybody. And sometimes we don't look at individual or human rights in this manner, but this is, you know, part of it. We think mostly about the dignity part of it. Do we treat everybody, and that goes back to the whole equality, and I think these are kind of two that are pretty similar. We talk about equality and human rights. Sometimes we interchange those terms, but that is not always the way it happens in reality. Um, Independent judiciary is the fair and impartial judicial system. So this helps to ensure that equality, that fairness and human rights, that uh, keeping from the abuse of power. Judges are free to act without influence and should act without influence. The last part of that statement is should act without influence is we're human, we're fallible, so sometimes that's not always true. But the brilliancy of the judiciary system, at least here in the U.S., is that if you don't believe or you don't feel that you were treated fair and equally, you do have the right to appeal. And so that's kind of cool about that. And then the last one is the competing political parties. If you have more than one political party, you have more than one idea that's being represented, and this gives the voters a choice. And we want people to represent us that follow at least as closely as possible to or have the same ideas that we do. Are you always going to find somebody who's completely 100%? No, you're not. And that's the thing about our elected officials is that we have to just find somebody that is sometimes the lesser of the evils that we can deal with. Now, is that ideal? No, but unfortunately, that's just the way the system works. So this was the last of the 14 principles of democracy, and I think it's important for us to first talk about these principles just so that we get an understanding of what we're looking at and why the framers started writing our Constitution, our Bill of Rights, our laws, setting up our system the way they did. These are the things that they had in mind when they started. So this is part two, and I hope you enjoyed it. This was a short one, and thanks for watching.